Un coup de gueule à l'endroit de la jeunesse. Il faut que nous nous réveillons. Je le dis et je vais continuer à le dire. Ne croyez pas que boire, danser, chanter, faire la fête peut nous amener à atteindre un certain niveau. À travers ce comportement, on ne peut que rester esclave.
Right, welcome back again. Traore has just spoken, and I love listening to Captain Ibrahim Traore because anytime this man sits down to speak, he speaks nothing but full of sense. There is no day I've ever had a speech or I've ever had Traore is about to speak and I feel like I'm going to get disappointed because everything he speaks makes a lot of sense. He is one of the best leaders we have in Africa today. He is the leader that has the interests of people at heart, the leader that loves the people, and the leader that knows it is because of the people, that is why you are leading them. The leader that understands what people really want and understands that Africa needs to be independent and needs to be free. Yeah. Today, he spoke about something very fundamental, something that we've been asking ourselves for a very long time. America and the Western countries, many of them, the foreign countries, when they come to Africa, they are willing to really support African countries. But when we look at it, many of us, people who are not really open-minded, they would think we are being given a lot of help in Africa. But at the end of the day, the help we are being given is on the basis or maybe on the things that doesn't really help us or on the things that will not enable us to rise up or to grow up in terms of as a continent or as a country or as a people of Africa. But the help that keeps on making us stuck at the same point. And at the same time, this help they're giving, they first of all come with something that make us believe or make us think we are being helped, okay? So it is like brainwashing our minds and making us believe that this help they're giving to us is really good, yeah? So we keep on believing in them and trusting them, but at the end of the day, they know what they are up to and they know what they are doing. Traore has spoken. The Western countries are willing to support us in terms of entertainment, in terms of cultural issues and dramas and all that and music and every other thing. But they are not willing to support us in terms of innovation and in terms of science and technology and all that. It's a very wonderful speech. I want you to take a listen to this speech and then I will come back and say something at the end of it. Kindly pay attention to the captions because it is a speech spoken in French, but also there is a translation on top of it. I hope you get it clearly. And I'm going to ask you to subscribe this channel if you're watching me for the first time. And don't forget to comment down there. Tell me what you think on the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. But until then, let's take a look at the video. I have a rant about the young people. We need to wake up. I say it, and I will continue saying it. Do not believe that drinking, dancing, singing, and partying can bring us to a certain level. Through this behavior, we can only remain slaves to consume and to consume what they produce. But more importantly, to giving others our wealth and our resources. Because we have no choice and we don't know how to do anything. I came to encourage research, to encourage innovation, to encourage technology. We must be able to create. It's good that it is happening like this in Lota. I therefore invite young people to rethink many things. And as I said the last time when I met the students at the Excellence Day, stop doing useless things on your social media and your digital platforms. There are pages, there are channels where we learn science, where we learn how to do things. I was saying you will find Indians, Pakistans, and People from other countries who manage to make basic tools and who post instructions on social media take an interest in these and try to produce those things here instead of going there to watch dances until yourself starting to dance like a masquerade in we don't know why. That's not it, but there are people who encourage you to do this. Look at some embassies here, they only fund that. Go to their embassies with a scientific technology project or an invention that you want to develop. They are not interested in that. At the best, they take you their country. But if it's being done here, they will never finance you. But if you approach them with a project involving destruction, they will do it. And then they will come and say, guys, we don't know what that. We don't want that. Technology first. Our culture is ourselves, and we will find the means to finance our own culture. So we are not asking for someone to come and finance. It's strengthening to us, it is fundamental, and we will do it ourselves. We do not ask anyone for help to do this. So experiment going to embassies and present this, requesting help to produce. Yeah, I really appreciate that so much. These are courtesy of Faso TV. I'm happy when Traore speaks. I always sit down to wait for a day that Traore will give a speech, you know, and this one is more than just a speech. How is relating with the young people and trying to educate them and tell them what they're supposed to do. He is a very much outstanding leader, very much distinct, you know. Because if we're being honest, this man is very right. Across Africa today, you will find foreign embassies, NGOs, and international organizations constantly sponsoring cultural events. Yeah, and yeah, it's okay to sponsor culture because it's very important. But now, Traore is trying to make something, bring something into sense here. Why do these embassies go silent when it comes to funding science in Africa and technology and innovation? Why is it easy to find money for an award show but almost impossible to find money for a chemistry lab or even a research project? Think about it. When was the last time you saw a big foreign embassy sponsor a Kenyan robotics teams, maybe Nigeria agricultural innovation program, or even any research center in Africa, yeah, with the same publicity and excitement they give to a cultural events? When was the last time? It has never happened. And if it happens, it is very rare. And that is what Traore is trying to talk about right here, right now. Yeah, they will fund culture. They will not fund science. And I know he wasn't really saying that culture is bad, but he was trying to express some certain imbalance, which should very much bother us because it's not just about art versus science, but it's about what kind of Africa the world prefers to see. You know, they love to see an Africa that entertains, but not an Africa that innovates. Yeah, they will love to see an Africa that performs. Yeah, but not an Africa that really gives production and all that. And the global systems feels more comfortable with the first one. An Africa that performs. That is what they want to see. Africa that will bring you entertainment. Africa that will bring you some certain beautiful things, you know. Yeah. But an Africa that is independent, that builds, that brings up things, that pioneers things. Yeah. Africa that is great. They don't want to see that kind of an Africa. And that is why Traore's message definitely hits very much. And even me, when I was listening to that speech, I was like, yes, the man is speaking a lot of truth in this. Yeah. And the global north understands something that many of us forget. Knowledge equals power. Without knowledge, you cannot be powerful. And therefore, people tend to control what we are learning. They bring us. That is why you realize that white America, or maybe the Western countries, they manipulated us using education. They left us with the kind of education they wanted us to read, because they knew if we can be able to control education, we can be able to control these people, you know, because knowledge equals to power. If you can be fed with a certain kind of education or a certain kind of knowledge, you are definitely going to behave the same way the knowledge you are given to implies, you know. So they are having our artists win international awards and making them learn and get some certain skills that can't really emerge to power. Like they can't really give back or reciprocate to power. You know, we have children around, we have youths around who are begging for money, yeah, to study, like to come up with things like engineering and science and technology, you know, but they're not willing to be given. Those people are not willing to give them that funding, but they're willing to fund entertainment. They are willing to fund culture. They are willing to fund many other things, you know, and the message they want is a performing Africa, a colorful Africa, not a producing Africa. Look around. There is funding for creative partnerships, cultural dialogues, and even music collaborations, but barely any for research into renewable energy, agriculture, or local technology. Because once Africa controls its own innovation, it no longer has to rely on the West for solutions. And I know someone would be like, it's not a must, depend on them and all that. It is okay. We also have a responsibility and a part to play, But before we get to that point, we also need to take note that when we take control, you'll see power dynamics changing. Please, an Africa that entertains the world is a very good Africa. It keeps us dependent because we depend on foreign product, foreign technology, and also foreign validation. But an Africa that builds its own future, that actually threatens the entire system because we're going to start making our own systems instead of reporting them. We design our own apps instead of depending on Silicon Valley. We study our own soil, plants, herbs, instead of waiting for the Western companies to help us. Yeah. Because we will already have these skills and we can be able to use it, and that is the Africa they don't want to see. Africa that thinks, invents, pioneers things. They do not want to see that kind of an Africa. But Traore comes up and says something that many people would think he was attacking but he wasn't attacking. He was just trying to bring some things into sense. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about ourselves. What Traore is saying is not just true to Burkina Faso, but it applies for the whole countries in Africa. Look at what, for example, a country like Nigeria, a country like maybe let's say Cameroon, a country like Kenya has. We have youths in our countries that are in universities studying science and technology. Yeah, but when there is an international funding, they are not ready to support a local invention. They will complain. They don't have the money and all those things. Government even itself promised to allocate a very little money to the science and technology. Kenya itself still spends less than 1%. So when you talk about innovation, we are not honest investing in it. Meanwhile, the events that will take the money are the ones that, as we said, are going to make Africa look beautiful. We are talking about creative hubs, music festival, fashion shows, and many other things. That is where the sponsorship is going. And that's exactly what Traore was calling out. Not to shame anybody, but also to make us see how the pattern works. Because if your brightest young people keep saying that art gets funding and science doesn't, what message are we sending? We are basically saying, please be seen, but don't build. Perform, but don't produce. Yeah? And that is very dangerous because it shapes what the next generation values. When you make fame easier to access than invention, you end up with a country that has 1,000 influencers, but a handful of researchers. And that one is not a progress. We need to agree on that. It is something that is being programmed. And if we think about it, this same pattern that Traore is talking about, it doesn't just happen through governments, and it's happening right here. Yeah, we have the social media, we have the gadgets. Yeah, it's another new classroom for millions of Africans and a battlefield for our attention. The algorithm, yeah, The algorithm sometimes, those invisible systems that design what you see online, they don't work by accident. They push what keeps you scrolling and not what helps you, if you've come across that. Yeah. So while you see 1,000 videos of gossip, drama, and many other things, like when you come across them, you rarely see African innovation, innovation, or a black innovation, or even African history trending. Yeah, but you will see things that these people are promoting, the things that they want you to see. Yeah, if an African person or a black person comes up with a robot, you'll see the video just getting few views. But if it is something that doesn't make any sense, they will support it. It will get a lot of views. And that is why that is where we are being taken from. That is where we are being confused from. And this is why Traore is simply telling the youth in Burkina Faso, use social media to learn, not to get distracted, because distraction is the new form of colonization. They will not come here, yeah, with the things they have that no longer need to silence us and all that. They will not come here with their arms. They're not going to make us slaves anymore. They will not even need to silence us. They just need to entertain us. Yeah, they don't need to ban books anymore. They just need to make books boring and influence us addictive. Yeah. They don't need to control our lands. They just need to control our timelines, our algorithms, and it's working. Obviously, I think majority of us are victims. We wake up and the first thing we do is check our phones, not the news, not the research site, not even an article about our economy. Yeah. But who said what, like who went where? Like that is very interesting for us to check out, and that is the new design of control. Keep Africans entertained and they will never ask hard questions. Keep them scrolling and they won't notice who is running the economies. Yeah, feed them trends and they'll forget their potential. And because an entertained continent is easier to control than an educated one. And here is the sad part. It's not just foreigners doing it anymore. And this is why I said we are going to address ourselves also. We can be busy here calling out foreign embassies for not funding science and innovation, but we really need also to look at ourselves as youths and as people, yeah, because we're using the same systems. Our own creators and media houses often prioritize what is loud over what is meaningful, because that is what is going to bring clicks and the views. And fine, yeah. So even when we think we're the ones controlling the narrative, we're still playing inside the system that someone else has built. Yeah, and that is the digital trap that Traore is warning us about. The war is no longer fought on the battlefield. It's fought where? On our algorithms, our feed, our social media. Yeah. So when he says use the internet to learn, he's not just he's giving us a warning, yeah, not just saying, because it's giving us a warning that can distract us. It can be sometimes the phone can be a tool and it can be a trap. Too many of us are choosing the trap. We've become so used to consuming entertainment than really information that feels heavy. We scroll past knowledge because these books, like, they have a lot of work, they're boring, so we end up passing the books. We want to get to the things that make our eyes like feel good and all that. We have to wake up, and if we don't wake up soon, we are going to raise a generation that knows every influencer's name that cannot even mention 5 African influencers, and that is the future that Traore does not want in Africa. So when what he said might sound small to some people, this is just another guy speaking, but if you really sit with it, it's one of the most important messages of our time. Because this is not just about Burkina Faso, it's about the kind of future Africa is being programmed to have. The global north has learned that you don't need to occupy a country to control it anymore. You just need to shape what its people value. If you can control what they dream about, what they study, what they celebrate, you've already won. And that's exactly what is happening. They've convinced us that creativity is enough, than being famous equals to being successful, that visibility is also power, when in reality, knowledge still remains the power we have. They will happily fund a festival, sponsor an award, or even a finance. a talk show, but because none of that creates any control, yeah, and that looks very progressive and very empowering. But at the end of the day, we are still dependent, or they are still the same people leading us, yeah, That's what Traore is trying to expose. That kind of soft, polite conversation that doesn't need weapons anymore. It just needs influence and attention. And we, the people at the center of it, because we hold the phones, we create the content, we drive the culture. If they can keep us entertained, they can keep us harmless, But the moment we start using the same energy to question, to innovate, to research, the game changes. That's why this president keeps talking about self-reliance. He's not saying reject the wild. He's saying wake up, use the platforms, but don't be used by them. Collaborate, but please don't depend. Learn from others, but build for yourself. And honestly, that message should be echoed across every African country, because the problem isn't just what the global north is doing, it is also what our own leaders allow. Well, government prioritize politics over education when ministries are spending more money on public image than public invention. When you have, these are the things that are happening. Yeah, they're not fighting over the right things. And then foreign embassies will step in field, and they are going to do it on their own terms. And that is how dependency is maintained. They'll come in politely, quietly, behind sponsorship banners, but they know what they're doing. We need to start asking harder questions. Why do our universities still struggle for basic funding? While foreign embassies host monthly cultural events, why can't our governments invest in labs with the same excitement they launch peace concerts? Yeah? Why our own scientists begging for grants while the celebrities will get brands daily? Yeah? While millions, even from governments, because it says something about what we reward, what we respect, and what we allow ourselves to become. And to be clear, this is not an attack against artists. Yeah, Africa needs the storytellers, the musicians, the filmmakers, the fashionistas. But also remember, art without empowerment just becomes entertainment. And that's the truth of the matter. Entertainment without knowledge and power becomes control, and then control without awareness becomes slavery. That is what I heard from Lynn Ngugi, which is very much important. So Ibrahim Traore sounds very simple. They carry generation of truth. If we don't invent on our own, science will always be consumers but never creators. If we don't use our own knowledge, others will sell it back to us at a profit. They are doing that with our raw materials. If we don't wake up, we'll keep mistaking these applause for progress, because they will fund our music, but they will not go funding our own minds. They will build us by theaters but not laboratories. Yeah, they won't care about our professors. Yeah, and as long as that remains true, Africa will keep on entertaining the world while begging for solutions. So the real question now is not about what Ibrahim Traore said, it's whether we are finally ready to listen or not, because the world won't stop distracting us. The algorithms won't shift unless we create it that way. They will not start at promoting education, and foreign embassies won't suddenly, and now because now in this conversation they won't prioritize our independence or research. That is on us. So it starts with choosing what we watch, what we share, and what we value. It starts with demanding that our politicians fund knowledge the same way they fund their campaigns. It starts with understanding that being loud is not as being liberated. Please, we need to understand that very clearly. The future of this continent depends on how we spend our attention, because attention is the new currency. So yes, our favorite human Traore said it very clearly, and I'm gonna say it again and again and again. These people will keep on funding our culture, but not our research. They will reward our visibility, but they will also fear our intelligence. And until we start building our own systems, our own research, our own technology, our own solutions, Africa will keep dancing to someone else's tech and someone else's rhythm. And the real revolution begins when we stop performing for the world and start performing for our own progress. And maybe this is just the part we also don't like to admit. We don't actually need to rely on embassies to fund anything. We can do it by ourselves. We have the power, we have the potential, we have the brains, we have the creativity and the population to sustain our own growth. What we lack is leadership and the will to prioritize our people over personal gains. If African government stop stealing public money and public funds, stop overborrowing, stop flying first class when hospitals are collapsing and children are not going to school and there is a lot of jobs who are unemployed, we will have enough to build laboratories in every country, not just stadiums. We would actually build labs as well. If the billions lost in corruption each year, in Kenya it's 2 billion. That's what I heard the president saying, and something that is very, very frustrating. Our president coming out and saying it loud and clear that we are losing 2 billion. If that money can be redirected into research, health, tech, Africa would already be producing its own medicine, our own apps, our own softwares, everything that we need. We will not be begging embassies for grants. We will not be begging them. Yeah, because truthfully, Africa's problem has never been potential. Africans are intelligent. The level of intelligence of black people is very big. The problem is priority. What are the politicians prioritizing? They would rather open foreign-funded cultural centers than fund a local university. Then they will take pictures at international summits and ignore scientists in their own countries. They will celebrate you, the empowerment, when they also refuse to empower the youth with actual resources. We can't keep blaming the world also for taking advantage when our own politicians leave the doors widely open. And I believe it's also time to stop asking embassies to build what our taxes should already be funding. Kenya can fund Kenyan science. Uganda can fund Ugandan science. Cameroon, Nigeria, talk about all those countries. They can fund themselves. Because once we start funding our own knowledge, nobody can control you. Once we start trusting our parts our way, nobody will even play with us or blindfold us or brainwash us. Yeah? And we need to understand the problem has always been ourselves. The problem sometimes is us, because the corruption in governments and all this bullshit and stupid things that are happening around are the things that are making us stuck behind. We don't need validation to innovate. We only need courage and integrity. And also we need to elect politicians who value progress over politics. So yes, Traoré exposed the truth about foreign funding, but he also reminded us that the real revolution starts with self-belief, because if Africa can feed the world, mine its minerals, power its industries, and inspire its art, then surely Africa can fund its own future. We do not need embassies writing checks for our own groups. We just need governments that stop stealing and citizens that can genuinely hold them accountable. And we also need a generation that chooses substance, because when Africa finally decides to fund Africa, nobody will ever be able to fund our silence again. Nobody. Let us wake up. And I love the fact that Traore said, use that phone to also build yourself. Go online and see how innovators are doing things. Yeah, join the referred groups. Follow the professors and people who are learned. Yeah, and at the end of the day, we are going to be helped by what we do. But again, if we mess up around, we are going to fall into a pit nobody is going to extract us from. Because these algorithms, sometimes it's also designed in a way only tech is visible to their kids and their children's. But what about us? What about we ourselves? It is something we need to think about it. It is something we need to learn. We need to think about it time and again, because, nobody is going to save us. There is no one who wants us to be saved. They want us to remain the same, not to be saved. But we're the only people who can save ourselves. We are the people who can save ourselves, and therefore we must be able to be very careful by this. We are designed to be poor. They want us to remain poor, for us to be able to continue begging. They don't want us to continue to think louder. They don't want us to be better people. They don't want. That is not what they want. They want us to remain stuck at the same point, at the same time, forever and ever. So there are things they cannot allow to get in our hands, to get in our eyes. But there are those things they will allow them to get in our eyes, for us to have insight, for us to look at them. Some certain things, but not some certain things. That is who they are. That is what they've always wanted us to be. I want you to watch that video again. Traore is very smart, very intellectual, very intelligent, with a super minded. Me, I want independence. I really want independence. I really want us to do things by ourselves. That is what I want. That is my opinion. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want on the comment section. I'm going to read all of them and I'll give a response where possible. I am the African Streamline Roundtable. Thanks for watching.